everyone, and welcome to Read This Now, the weekly webcast where Brad, Gustafson, and I share two books that we think you should read. When, Brad?
That was my best head roll I've ever done. Read right now, people. And I'm telling you, I can only speak for the book. I don't know what you're going to talk about, but I got a good one here. I can't wait.
Well, don't keep us in suspense. Get started.
Okay, I'm hugging my book for good reason.
I love it.
Yeah, I don't know if the purple hue, my shirt is probably competing with it a little bit or clashing with it, but this is one of the most beautiful book covers. So when I reveal it here in a second, I hope the pixels and the resolution of your computer can translate this thing, because it is a gem. But I want to tell you about it first. So picture book today. Main character, Violet. I love this book, and I'm probably speaking to principals and I guess teachers too right now. I love this book because it's not a super long read aloud. Like, I think you could do it quickly and just have an incredible conversation, or just have fun and go about your day after the book. Sometimes I'll find really good books that are harder to read at a staff meeting because they're just really long. Not that that's not bad, but this one is a little bit shorter, but still very powerful. So that's one mini side note. Anyway, Violet. So the story starts out with Violet reminiscing about something, and I had it marked, and then I got so into my story, it was gone. So, and it says, Violet fondly remembered the table. So she's staring kind of longingly at the table. And then it goes on in a way that only Peter Reynolds can do with his art. And it shares why and what she's remembering around the table, the memories, the conversations, the laughs, the lighting candles, cooking with a family member, just all the different things that she connects to that table. So it's not just a thing, but it's a space. I think it's a space. And I think it represents something bigger than just eating dinner. I think it seems like it represents coming together. But the memory, and this is the power here, the memory is fading. And that's why she was staring longingly at it, because it was like disappearing as her family developed new interests, and the hustle and bustle of life pulled her or pulled them away from the table, or pulled them towards whatever, soccer games and driving, or pulled her sibling to his computer screen where he was maybe less interested in the space and maybe more interested in connecting with humans on his device. And it wasn't, that would be sad, and that could be the end of the story, but it's not until Violet kind of meets everyone where they're at in their whether it's in their commitment to other things, distractibility, passions, and taps into their strengths to get them to come back to the space. So for example, inviting her brother to use his device to maybe like design a new table, right? Do you get kind of how that works? So anyway, over the course of the book, she's reconnecting, bringing them back, and they build something new and maybe, well, I don't want to say better, but something different together, something special and something powerful. And I fell in love. I really, Jen, I couldn't stop thinking about this story after I read it. It's Our Table by Peter Reynolds. And this would be one of those books that you would add, I forget what they're called, to your must pre-buy list, or I don't know what it's called. It comes out in October, right? But this is one, like, don't forget about this. Really write yourself a Post-it note. The other thing, and I don't do this with all books, but I did with this one, in addition to just loving the story, I actually liked what it represented possibly for our school. Like, the table has kind of sort of faded over the last 17 months, and the things that maybe we cherished and remembered, a lot of them are still there. The people are still around, but some of the things we loved are harder to see just because of lots of other important things. So I look at kind of the start of a new year as a way to talk about, like, what kind of table do we want to build together, and what will the foundation be, and what are the gifts and strengths and passions that can go into it, and then also prioritizing, framing things like, is this a table thing, like a foundational who we are, or is this a place setting? Is this a place setting thing that could be shifted, or maybe that we need to clear and set on a shelf? So
I love that. I love that book. I saw it, I don't know when I first saw it, a few months ago maybe. And first of all, Peter Reynolds' art is always so recognizable. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, even if there was nothing on the cover that told you who that book was by, you would know. Like, you would be like, oh my gosh, that's Peter Reynolds. And I think that book is so sweet, but I love the idea of thinking about it in terms of your organization, your school, and setting priorities and what types of things, to carry your metaphor, even to another, like what kind of things are the legs? Like without them, the table falls over. What kinds of things, as you said, are the place settings, which are important and lovely, but not necessarily can be changed out and aren't vital to the function of the table, like that kind of, I love that.
Yeah, and I wanted to start this year. Teachers don't come back for a few weeks, but I wanted to start with a read aloud, and you can probably see what one I picked because it's so perfect for it. One other magical thing, I alluded to the purple in the beginning, or how stunning the cover is, and I don't think you can fully appreciate over a computer screen, but I was noticing it is so magical and enchanted, and I don't know how to describe it. But I was noticing the cool lighting that
little
Peter
lights,
did.
yeah.
Not a chandelier or a typical light that I might have in my house, like what do you call those things? In the ceiling, doesn't matter what they're called. But I know whenever I'm outside or driving by other people's houses, when I see these kind of lights or like restaurants, though, I could just stare at those forever. And sure enough, he has those above it. So maybe that's why I'm just staring at the cover. The lighting.
I think it adds, and it also, like, just to me, in the cover itself, and it's been a while since I read the book, but I felt like just looking at the cover, like this could be indoors, it could be outdoors, like that kind of lends itself to multiple ideas leading into the book. Makes you wonder, where's this table going to be? What's going to happen? I like that. I like those kinds of questions. That's awesome. I love it. I love that book. And I do think it's one to definitely add to your to be purchased pile, your to be read pile, to your order list for the beginning of the year, if you're able to do that. I love that. Well, as usual, we're sort of on the same page in terms of books this week, because I chose a picture book as well for this week. I felt like it had been a while since I had shared a picture book. And I've also been thinking a lot about books that help us develop empathy, especially for experiences that might be a little bit different than our own. And I've been thinking about that, especially when it comes to really littles, kids who aren't reading yet and who are responding to primarily the images that are on a page, and then to the context in which it's shared with them. The adult who might be reading the book with them, whether that's at home or it's in a library or it's in a classroom, they're responding to that. And it gives us the opportunity as educators and just people who are literacy champions who want to see kids grow up into readers who feel connected to books, who want to hug books in the same way you were hugging the Peter Reynolds book at the beginning of the show. It gives us an opportunity to have conversations with kids about their emotional response to that kind of content. And, Brad, you and I were talking before the show even started about that, and how, like, being able to navigate our responses in a low stakes environment, like with a picture book or whatever, and thinking deeply about how stuff makes us feel, can then prepare us to do the same thing when the stakes are a little bit higher, when we're online and we're bombarded by information that might be traumatic or harmful or even confusing, right? So that practice is really good. So I've been thinking about that, books that might help little kids, especially littles, develop those habits. And maybe bigger learners too.
Right.
We all need practice doing that. And so I came across this book recently, and I hadn't really heard of it until a friend of mine was talking about it. And then I picked it up on their recommendation, and wow, it has just blown me away. I'm going to go ahead and share the cover. It's called Over the Shop. And the author is JonArno, Lawson, and the illustrator is Leng. I want to show those real quick. And then just give you sort of a pan out. You can kind of see from the cover that the shop is one that the young girl in the story runs with her grandparent. Okay. And even though the case cover of the book is the same, there is something interesting on the back. In the different cover, it reads, "Apartment for rent, inquire within." This is a wordless picture book. So this is a picture book without the story written out. It's up to the reader to do some interpreting. And what we see from the very beginning of the story is this young girl and her grandparent running the shop, which feels old and kind of dusty and lonesome. There's not a lot of people around. There's a neighbor who they try to engage with, but who won't look up from their paper to talk to them. There's a stray cat that runs around that the grandparent tries to chase off, and the granddaughter tries to lure back, etc. But then one day the grandparent puts a sign in the window that there's an apartment for rent above the store and they need to rent it. All these people start inquiring. You can see these people who come and ask, and the grandparent will take them upstairs, and all they see are the challenges of the apartment. There are things in disrepair. It's dirty. It needs paint. The door's sort of falling off the wall. Like, there's lots of work to be done, until finally this couple arrives, and what they see is potential in the space, and they start to work to clean it up. And they need some things from down in the shop to do that, like a broom or some materials. But then also they need the help of the little girl and her grandparent and the stray cat. And suddenly, not only is this apartment rented and turned into something beautiful, but this little family sort of emerges, and they turn the whole shop into something beautiful, including the neighbor next door, who then wants to be part of the party. And I will just show you at the end, you can see the shop at the beginning is called Lowell's General Store, but then at the end, it's called Lowell and Friends, and you can see the apartment. And the other piece that I love about this, and this is an inference that not all readers might make, not all readers might make from this, is that the genders of many of the characters are unclear. For example, I kept referring to the little girl's grandparent as opposed to grandmother or grandfather, because we don't really know. And what is lovely at the end when the shop is transformed is there are little subtle details like the rainbow flag that is hanging outside. What does that mean? Don't know, but maybe it's a sign of acceptance of something that wasn't being accepted before. But all of the frames with no words, the only words in this entire picture book are the names of the shop. The name of the shop that changes, and the sign that says the apartment's for rent. That's it. Those are the only words. The rest of it are just the drawings. And each frame gives the reader the opportunity to think deeply about the visuals and what their emotional response is to that, because there are no words that lead you to, or even tell you what you're supposed to feel, or lead you to a feeling. Those images are there, which you might relate to from images, experiences in your own life, or maybe they're a little different from what you've seen before. But this wordless picture book, which just is this journey from loneliness to companionship and family and joy, it speaks volumes. Even without words, there's so much there to talk about with kids and with adults. And I feel like if I were a language arts teacher in the middle or high school, I could use this book for writing prompts. But if I was teaching kindergarten, I could use this book to have kids talk about how the different pieces just make them feel and what they should do with those feelings. So it's called Over the Shop, and I'll show it one more time. And it is by, I want to make sure I get this right, JonArno, Lawson, and Leng. And I think you should read right now.
It sounds incredible.
It is.
I had a roller coaster of emotions as I was listening, and so I had like my inner critic of myself was saying, gosh, Brad, Jen's starting out sharing something that sounds so powerful, and how I led my book talk was, it doesn't have many words. Like, how superficial and shallow could that be? Then I felt good because it was a wordless picture book. I'm like, okay, we're on the same level. And then you ended yours so powerfully that I was back down to my golly, Jen, you crushed it.
Oh my gosh. Don't be silly. Number one, this is not a competition because I know that the two of us are really competitive. And if anything were to end our friendship, it would be that. So that's the first thing would be making it a competition. But number two, I was super moved by, and like, you know how when you're listening to something and you're like, light bulbs start like coming on, like you can't see them, but you can feel those light bulbs coming on over your head, you know, like you remember when you were in the classroom and you were, you know, talking to kids and you could almost see the light bulbs over their heads as they were getting it, you know what I mean?
I may have put more light bulbs, I put more light bulbs out than anything else, but yeah, I can remember.
I felt my own light bulbs going on today when you were talking about the metaphor of that table in a school organization. I read that book several times, never made those connections.
Oh, cool.
So that is awesome. I mean, come on now. Look at this has become a therapy session for us, for our viewers.
It has.
Really,
and I will say, I don't ever find myself competing with you. Like if anything, it was admiration. So I was more listening in that way. It wasn't, definitely wasn't a comparison, at least in the traditional sense. So I
know. I'm just teasing. But I love two great picture books today. Two really interesting conversations, right?
Right. I'm gonna hug my book and then give everyone the website in case they want. Yeah, there, isn't that awesome? You gotta love it. So go to bit.ly/read_this_now for lots more books that you'll want to hug.
Yay! I love that. I love it. You know what? We're going to have to come up with a rating system that's related to hugs. Like, is it a bear hug book? Is it a gentle squeeze book? We'll have to come up with a rating system. I love it.
Okay, I'll give that some thought. That's good.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Happy reading.